Hi, this is a quick video about using Git for source control. Okay, what do I mean by source control? I mean keeping older versions of your source code, your computer programs and other documents very tightly controlled. Usually what happens if you're working on software, you get it working to a point. And what you should do is, if you have source control, you should check that in. You should commit that working or partially working software to source control. What often then happens is you break what was previously working. And what source control lets you do is it lets you go back to a previously known good copy. Rather than keeping copies of things on your file system, source control lets you keep very tight control on particular versions and label them and leave notes in them about what was working and what wasn't. More recent version control systems called distributed version control systems like Git or Mercurial allow even greater flexibility, where you can push your local changes and your local copy up to a server, and other people on your team usually can pull down those changes and work with it. So this is just a quick demonstration. What you can see here behind me, and I'll go back to the mini-me version, is the Git website. You can find the link in the notes below, down there, I think. And you can download this for free and install it on anything you like, really, a Mac or a Windows PC. You may already have it for a Mac if you've got a Mac, but it's the version for Macintosh is there, the version for Windows is there. There's a version for Linux too, if that's your operating system. Okay, so the biggest central repository for a lot of Git source code repositories is GitHub, right? And that link is also again down there in the notes. And this is my GitHub repository. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new repository just by clicking that new button there. And I'm going to just call this example for video. Okay. And I don't need to put anything else in there. I can put a description if I want. I can make this private so that not everybody sees the repository. I think I'm going to do that. I'm going to add a README file. I'm going to add a .gitignore, and there's various things. Sometimes you don't want certain files to go into the repository. Certain temporary files that sometimes get generated. Usually these are things like .o files if you're compiling from C, or .obj files, intermediate files that can be easily regenerated using your creation system. And then we can also choose a license, and I'm just going to go with I think my usual one is the MIT license. And now I am completely ready to create the repository, so I can just click that, and there we go. Okay, I have a README file. It has something in it. It's my initial commit, and we're all ready to go. Right, so now what I can do is I can go in here and I can get access to this information on my local machine. At the moment this is up in the web, but if I want to get it on my local machine, I suggest you use one of these options. My personal preference is to use SSH, and I will put a link in the notes to show you how to set up SSH. I may even do a separate video to show you how to do that. So I'm going to do that, copy the that across because I already have my SSH key set up. And then what I can do is I can do a git clone of example for video. Okay, and now if I go in there, I can see the example for video. And what I'm going to do is, I don't like that as a title. I'm just going to change it to that. This repository is aimed at showing a Git example. Right, so there's that. Now what I can do is I can do a git status on the command line, and it'll tell me if anything that is in the repository has changed. And you can see it's highlighted in red that the readme.md is changed. So now I can do a git add readme.md, and if I do another git status, it'll tell me that the readme has been staged for upload. Right, that's a halfway position. That means I'm ready to add the changes I made to the repository, but I haven't yet done that. In order to do that, I do a git commit, and I'm going to do a message. Like that, so that we'll see that message. And now I've done that, we'll do another status, and there's nothing to commit, but my branch is ahead of the origin branch, and I need to do a git push in order to get it back to origin. Origin is the remote repository. That's where the server is. So I do that. So that's back up on GitHub. So if you do a git push, that'll push everything up there. And what we should be able to see if we refresh this page is we can see that the changes I made on my local machine have now been uploaded to Git. Okay, so I did several things there. I suggest this is the easiest way to create a repository. Create it up on GitHub first, then clone it locally, make any changes you want, add those changes to the repository, commit those changes to the repository, and then push those changes back to the central repository so you can share it with other people. Okay, and you should be able to see, right, there's my README file, and you should be able to see the history of the README file, right? And any change you make, it'll show. And there's that message I put, show how to stage and commit a file, and there you can see the difference between what was there before from the initial commit to the change I made locally. Okay. I am going to do one other example, right? What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you an example of a problem, right? And I'm going to edit the file. I'm going to say this is, I'm going to edit the file up on GitHub. This repository shows a Git example. Okay, so I'm just changing the text and I'm going to commit the changes. Okay, and now what I'm going to do is on my local machine, I'm also going to make a change. I'm going to say is aimed at showing how to use Git, right? And I'm going to look at the status. I'm going to add the README file, and then I'm going to add and I'm hoping what I just did, because I made the changes, two different changes to the same line of the text file, I'm thinking it's going to generate a problem. So if I try and push that back to the server, it should give me an error, right? Error, failed to push some refs to the server, and it suggests that you may want to first integrate the remote changes. So if I do a git pull, okay, it tried to do a git pull, but there is what it's called a merge conflict. Let's see what it left in the README file, right? The README file left both the change I made up on github.com and the change I made locally. The one I made locally is in the head component, and the one that I made up on GitHub is in the second component. And there's the conflict area is surrounded by less than signs and greater than signs, and the difference between, or the dividing line between the two different changes is indicated by that row of equal signs. Okay, and now what I can do is I can decide that I actually wanted to keep the first one and just edit the file and remove all of the conflict information, and then I can let's have a look at the status. It means it's modified. I need to add the README file, and I'm going to say I resolved the conflict. And now I should be able to see what happened. Okay, so I got both of those, and right, I kept the one from what that I put in on my local machine, so that's now available. Okay, another tool that I highly suggest you have a look at, and I will put a link to it in the notes, is a thing called Sourcetree. And this, let me just open up this particular repository. And this is Sourcetree. I don't know whether I can change the I don't know whether I can change the font sizes, but you can see it gives me a history of all the changes, including the fact that there were two different changes made, and we had to do a merge to resolve those two different changes. Okay, I'm done. I will put together the video that I suggested